Hey guys, welcome to webinar number 9. This is a cool topic. It's about final table short-term memory and just remembering things in general, but mostly final tables since obviously we should be paying more attention. And some stuff about note-taking too, because I think it's important. If we're gonna note-take, it should be on something meaningful. But sometimes note-taking isn't even necessary because using our short-term memory, hopefully we can learn some things or witness some things that can help us in future hands. So the whole idea from this is to pay attention to any type of read that can help. And so if you want a review on this, there's a video called Environment. And it's basically, environment is about every possible read you could ever come up with, all genres, anything you can ever notice. But what I want to do first basically is go over a final table that Persona Nagata played. And I'm just going to flip through, and I want you guys to spot any type of read that you possibly can. Not necessarily from Ben, who's the hero, but more so from the other people. Okay, so this is the first hand of the final table. Let's begin. Yes, small blind is really good. Okay. So hold on though, I should mention one thing. Don't type reads as you see them. Okay? Don't, like, if you witness something, don't type it in. Don't do it yet. And don't take notes either. Use your short-term memory. And I'll flip through it at a medium speed. No, don't write. Morton, I don't want you to write anything down. I want you to use your memory here. Okay? I could just hit the play button, but I just wanted it to go a little faster. Don't play when you're drunk. Okay, we'll stop it there. Tell me some things that you noticed. That's good. Good, good, good. That's important information. What else? Tell me everything you noticed. So I'll write that there. Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently the Skype thing messed up. Okay. So that button shoved an ace. Yeah. Do you remember what hand it was? Nice. Suited. Okay. Big blind flat call. What hand was that? See, I don't even remember that. Ah, yes, that's right. The Lacrids guy. Yeah, we raised ace jack. The guy flat called in big blind. Okay. Morton says we could be more aggro. They see us tight. Okay. Lacrid, 2 shoves, but no air. Anything else? Why he check folded flop, I guess. Anything, anything, anything? We got more hands. We got about 20 more to go. Okay. Active hands. Okay. Okay, I'll go a hair slow. Active player. Okay. But you know what's crazy about this is in real life, when this happens, you have a bunch of other games going a lot of the time. So you're probably even more distracted than right now. And if I just keep talking, you can start getting a little distracted. A lot of guys play with music on too, and sometimes that can make you distracted. It's definitely a lot easier to... Oh, you have 20 other tables? Well, isn't that what it's like when you're playing a final table anyway? I guess it's different because you have to move around and stuff. Your eyes, because you're... So I guess it's a little different. I'll cut you some slack. Okay, so we'll do our under the gun hand, and then we'll stop it. Okay. Now tell me anything you noticed. Who shoved Jack 8 right? It was Lacrid. Which I guess the we are tight thing kind of goes here. So those are kind of the same. Anything else? That's okay. What is it? God, he's reading my soul. Is anyone else having trouble with that at all? Maybe try, Marcus, try maybe disconnecting from TeamViewer and like just reconnecting or something. I like what Dottie noticed here. Look, 3x queens. That tells us something. What if he min raises later? Anyway, let's continue. About 14 more hands. He 3x'd a7 too. Interesting. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. Ah. Almost done. That's an easy shove with Jack 3. We all know that. Okay. What else can we add to this? Yeah, agree. He was overthinking because it was simplicity. Someone's mic is on. Thank you. Any other reads we have? Good. So simplicity, raise folded. Got more aggro, 5-6 handed. Oh, it was freezing a lot? Good. 3x is a standard open for what, the table? Is that what you mean? Delete Lacrid gave walk. Any other reads before? Any others? Any others? Just going to try and find our starting hand again. There we go. Yeah, he shoved 5 big blinds. Or sorry, called. Simplicity called 5 big blind BVB shove with Jack 10 offsuit. And guy showed Queen 5. But anyway, okay. So there's probably more. I don't care. There's going to be tons of reads everywhere. This is all environment stuff. Okay. Out of all these things, if we could go back in time and play this again with all the reads that you guys came up with, which one of these won't help? Or which ones are basically not going to make a difference at all? Go through. Okay. So the walk won't help. I'll star them for however many people say which ones won't help. Okay. I think it helps too, but I'm going to just star. If you think something doesn't help, type it in. Lacrid 2 shoves. Okay. Vote for all the ones you think. The guy shoved ace 7. Simplicity raise folding. No, Morton, you're on to something here. Morton thinks that all information helps. Morton, do you think it helps at all if, for instance, the thing that you said, we could be more aggro, they see us as tight? Does that help? What if they don't notice? One important distinction about something, a read like this, is the way when we talk about how people view us, is that means that they have to notice. And what's interesting is when you're not doing something, it's a lot harder to notice that. I noticed that you didn't do that. That's really hard. It's easier to notice that you did do something. So like if you were being really, really aggro, it's more likely they notice that than if you're being very, very passive, because some event is occurring. Folding kind of just slips under the radar, so to speak. It's invisible. You know, if someone's stacking their games, they never see you fold. They only see when you raise. What other reads don't help at all? Yeah, that's true. His Jack 10 call doesn't really help because we would just assume that a really good player is capable of doing that. And even if we see him call a Jack 10, what is that going to change for us? You know, so I think that's kind of smart. How about a better question here? Which one of these, or which few of these, do you need to know? Or would you be really thankful that you had that information? Yeah, Marty has a point. He opens queens in a7. What we can find from that is just 3x's is completely standard open. He's right. There's no like raise that's designed for a certain type of hand. So you would want to know that Lacrid shoves Jack 8 suited. Does that help considering we saw him give a bunch of folds? Like, does that kind of clashes against itself? It's like he was really tight, but then he shoved Jack 8 suited. What does that mean? We received a walk. Any other ones that you think are like must-haves here? Simplicity upping his aggression as it gets shorter. Yes. Yes. And the fact that he's raised folding. Yes, because as Big Nuke said, that means that you can start 3-betting him and reshoving, stuff like that. So the flat call and check fold. So let's take out the ones we definitely don't need. We don't need to know that the guy shoved the button with a7. The 3x standard open might be useful. Knowing that Simplicity called isn't really useful because we would just expect him. Yeah, in Simplicity, yeah, for sure. Knows what he's doing. Trying to think how they perceive us when it's a bunch of random people is probably not helping, especially if we're folding, because they're probably not noticing. If we think like that, it's fine, but it could tend to make us overthink. I guess the guy showing his cards is kind of cool because he's basically giving free information. That's kind of important. Notice how him shoving Jack 8 suited and his no air shoves kind of clash. Maybe we can take that out because a lot of people just raise with queens. Maybe like I just want a few notes. I want to keep it as simple as possible. I have 2 questions. On this table, who is the most aggressive and who is the most passive? Just add that down here. Simplicity. Agree. 100% agree. Simplicity is the most aggressive. Yeah. Because passiveness is harder to spot because it's not activeness. Activeness is easier to notice because something is happening. Yeah. And then our short-term memory fails us. How about this? If I close that out, besides Simplicity and Lacrid, because we wrote their names down, can anybody name the screen name of one person at that table? Ooh, you got one! Okay, besides Ben, too. That's cheating. I can't even remember anybody's name besides Simplicity, Hero, obviously. I'm sorry, Dottie got that. That's impressive. How do you do that? How do you do that? It's so crazy. Cool. Let's pull that back up really quick. Who is Sway Taji? I've been staring at this now for like half an hour, and I was like, oh, I've never seen his name before. I think Simplicity is easy to remember because, you know, it's like he's known and stuff like that. Yeah, it's simple. So the most passive seems like people who you can't remember their names probably. Who is the most unique person at this table? And unique could be meaning tons of things. Like they're the best player on earth, they're the worst player on earth, there's something special about them, whatever it is. Who would you say is the most like unique individual? I think there's one clear person. Okay, says Simplicity, because he's really good. Marty says these other people. Seems like, I guess maybe that's a very subjective question, maybe. So maybe it's not the best question in the world. It seems like this Lacrid's guy is kind of special in a way. Like, he shows his cards every hand. Like, that's something we need to remember. Like, But at the same point, it's very subjective. Like that's how I'm interpreting this. Like if there's two people I want to watch at this table, it's Lacquered and Simplicity. Simplicity because he's amazing, and Lacquered A because he's showing everything and he's giving us free information, but B, BVB hands. The third person I'd want to notice would probably be the Melgen guy, because he's going to be BVB for us. And we know we're going to always be active 100% of the time BVB when the opportunity comes, so we would want to pay extra close attention to who's on our left, who's on our right, and then maybe like a really, really good player or someone unique in the game. So anyway, I think what's really important out of this is to take reads that can actually influence something. Don't take reads that don't affect anything. Like, I'm still wondering if Lacquered shoves Jack-8 suited and we know that, how does that change us? You know, where did he even do it? I think it was right here, right? How does that change us here if we know he shoves Jack-8 suited? Right. Good point, Big Nukes. But then, like, what hand specifically? Because we also have the read that he's walked us and that he continues to show good hands. So we could ISO with ace-8 because we know that. It's weird, though. It's like he has Jack-8 suited now, but then he's been showing us all these good hands. Morton says, I think he tricked us. He showed good hands from small blind and button to let us think he has good hands when he shoves wide. That's possible. I know that's something that Abe Barone does that a lot of people don't do. He always shows hands to kind of give that impression. But there's a big difference between Aaron and Lacquered. Aaron's awesome. Lacquered is Lacquered. But it is possible that he could be doing that, you know? The showing good hands, there's guys who just show hands because they just want to say, hey, I have it. It's like when you go to a casino and guys always show when they have a good hand. They're like, I'm not bluffing. Like, I'm not messing around. There's guys who can be reverse psychology-ing you, if that's a word, but maybe now you're reverse psychology-ing yourself because you're like, well, he's doing this, so I'll think this. So then in response to that, I'll think this way or something like that. And we just got to keep our thinking easy. Excuse me. I think there's a lot of cool stuff like that in poker when you get to a higher level, but let's be honest, we're just playing low-stakes sit-and-goes here. We don't need to be thinking on this type of level. Okay. And Paul says he probably doesn't shove wide enough BVB. I mean, he did give us a walk before, so how wide can he really be? So anyway, I think that's just a great exercise to kind of practice thinking stuff. If you want to review some more, environment video is really, really good. So any last questions about that before moving on to the next thing? And I would actually agree. I missed that. Lacquer is probably bad because he's showing us all of his hands. That's actually a really good read. Just knowing who's good, who's bad. Okay. Test. When no one talks, I always think my internet goes out for a sec. Okay. Okay. So let's go on to the next one. And just some things I want to mention. When taking notes, make sure that you take notes that impact how you may play a hand later on. Okay? We have a note that says we got to walk from someone that's really good. If we have a note like Paul said that says someone is bad or someone is good, that's actually helpful. If we know that 3x is a standard open, that doesn't help us as much because we could just assume, well, 3x is a standard open, you know? You want to make sure that your notes are concise and easy. And you can remember them in short-term memory and use them to your advantage. But if you want to write it down in game, make it quick. So many times I've coached guys who will literally write the day, the time, the game type, all this stuff that's irrelevant, and it's just a waste of time. I've literally seen people write things like villain check raise turn as bluff, then called river when he hit his hand. Like, that's not going to help us, you know? And I'm not going to out the person who wrote that. It was like 2 years ago, whatever. Yeah, or notes like that on people's shoving ranges. Holy crap. I mean, think about it like this, guys. There are times for detailed notes. This is not the time. You know, if you've heard that incident about the two high-stake players who combined Isildur's hand histories and did this complete, like they went through all of his hands and did like a complete analysis of everything, and then they took Isildur for tons and tons of money. Illegally so they did that, because it's unethical, I guess is what it is. But that's high stakes, like really, really high stakes, where there's an intense metagame and thinking going on. Yeah, and it's heads up, so there's more actions, and there's more complexity to it, you know. But these two big time pros were able to study everything about Isildur and basically crawl inside of his brain and extract money from him because they knew what he was thinking at all times. And we don't need detailed notes. Like we would want simple notes, like he can bluff, or writing down bluffer or bluffs or something like that. It's short, sweet, it's not time consuming, so you don't get distracted while you're making that note in game. And it actually is going to make a difference for future hands. Fish is a good note too. Noting good and bad players is a really good note. And even the good ones, since they're more easily recognizable, that's fine too. You know, just be like, oh, good. But it's more important, like if you see someone really bad, just be like, bad. Because that's a really easy read that will actually influence the way you play a hand against him. Or if you knew someone was a bluffer, or if someone was a call station, a very simple note that can help. And if you want, you don't have to make these notes. You can just make them in your short-term memory. But we want to make sure whatever we store in our short-term memory is useful and short. The reason is because our short-term memory can't really hold that much information unless you're just a freakishly genius memory type of person, you know? Big Nukes reminded me that the average person can maintain 7 items in their short-term memory, plus or minus 2 things, so like 5 to 9. And these are easy, simple things, not complexities that you're all going to remember. Like, you know, if you go to school, you're at a university or whatever, and you study for a test and you have to remember all those things, it's really, really hard to remember 5 to 9 things of complexity. But like Big Nukes is saying here, if it was digits, for example, it's easier to remember. But right now, probably 5 to 9 is what the average person here could remember, except for that. But see, you can remember more things and store them into long-term memory when there's some association with them. Example, like a phone number, right? Especially you guys, international phone numbers have so many freaking numbers. It's crazy. How do you guys do that, right? But there's some association meant for that, where like it has some type of significance. Or the way, like for me, I can remember more numbers than usual if in my mind I turn those numbers into flops. So like for example, if someone gave a number like that, there's no way you could remember that. But you could trick yourself if you just thought like deuce 6-5 flop, 7-8-9 flop, 6-5-4 flop. Because then in your brain, there's some type of an association that you like. Something that helps you remember. Big Nukes adds, if you want to remember something longer, you have to repeat those things so the timer restarts. Yeah, I heard something once. I don't know how accurate this is. Someone told me once that if you repeat something 6 times in a row, it's more likely to stick in your head. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but just the idea of repetition. So Marcus' question says, I've been studying this, and if you guys want, I can help with memory tricks later. Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be cool, man. That'd be awesome. The idea is the things that we're going to put in our short-term memory, we want them to be useful. Simple things that we can use to our advantage later on. And some of these things, even the ones we still have here, are still a little complex. We need to dumb them down. Like, player is crappy. Player is really good. He gives walks, something like that. So some other things that are worth mentioning. Just because someone sees you do something, it doesn't mean that they will store that information. Okay, that's really important, and we'll get to a hand that really soon. Maybe Dottie. And so Dottie mentioned 20 seconds. I heard, I mentioned it last webinar, a really high up professor at a top university said the average person, the average short-term memory is 20 seconds long. So I kind of find that interesting. And poker is not simple memory. Like, this is complex stuff. A reg, just because he's a reg, will not remember that you did, and then whatever you did, how you check raised with a draw or something like that, you know, or how you called him down with top pair or something like that. Like, you know, because those things, they fade in your memory. They fade out of your memory, especially when you have a bunch of games going at once. It's harder to maintain that information. When we were looking through Persona Nargata's game, we were only one tabling, and it was still difficult sometimes to recognize things. And Big Nukes is right. Maybe you won't even give a shit about it. And it's very true. And so a very common thing that we have to understand is that just because someone's a reg, it doesn't mean that they're like out to look at every single thing you do, remember that stuff, store it in their memory bank, and then exploit you because of it. And it's common sometimes to feel that just because simplicity is at the table, that he's going to come after you. There's a hand where this one, he folded because simplicity was in the big blind. Simplicity might know what I'm doing is a reason that gets thrown around here. Or that reg might know what I'm doing. He probably has 30 other games up and doesn't give a shit right now. You know, anybody, and regs don't flat, exactly. But it's the fear of simplicity reading through him for raising wider and then reshoving. And then the ironic part is, if he is reshoving wide, then we would want to raise call ace-9, but that's beside the point. But the point is, mainly, is that we don't want to get freaked out just because someone is a reg, and it's very common to subconsciously, or even sometimes consciously, be put off by, oh my god, that's a reg, be careful. He might know what I'm doing, he's so good. When in all reality, most regs aren't very good, and the ones who are good, like Simplicity 8, they're playing too many tables to put full attention into what you're doing. You know? So even if he's capable of remembering, which I think he is, I'm friends with him, I've talked to him a lot, I think he's capable of remembering things and even changing his game to play back at you. But he's so busy playing other games. He plays 30 to 40 at a time. He's not going to have the mind and brain power to always play back when he has all those other things going on. It's really, really hard to do that. Okay, so that's what's really important about regs. A lot of regs, we have to remember, have predefined reads. In other words, these reads are created when there is no read at all. Most regs are not exploiting you. If they ever do something, they are playing with a predefined interpretation of how regs are supposed to play and playing against that. Are you just a baller that you can 40 table and read everybody? So a question would be like, should we remember what regs do and use that against them? And if so, what should we remember? So give me some things that are important, little tiny things that are important to use versus regs. Big Nukes is so crazy. So good. Yes. People who call wide. That's good to know. Yeah, you can make notes after the session as long as those notes are going to help you in the future. Big Nuke says if they like to play post-flop BVB when we're in small blind, sure. So like, do they flat call from the big blind, which is rare a lot, I guess, with stack sizes being small. Oh, I see. Ah, if they shove over limps BVB, that can be very useful. Or a really easy thing like an ATC shove, BVB, something like that. But see how these are like simple things? How aggressive is someone? Do they call wide BVB? Do they shove over limps BVB? Do they shove ATC BVB? See how these are some things that we can use to our advantage right out the gate. For example, let's say that we're in the small blind here and we have our 147,000 stack. If you had something like ace-9, the best play is probably to limp in. And simplicity would probably shove over the limp with a lot of hands. Then we call. But conventional sit and go play would say shove it pre-flop from the small blind. It's an unexploitable shove. Okay. So now I want to give some examples of overthinking. One common thing I hear a lot from students is, I'm going to walk this guy to show him that I'm capable of folding. Therefore, I can be more aggressive in future hands because he thinks I'm capable of folding. But a lot of players stack their tables, and when you walk them, the game never pops up. It's invisible to them. And even if you did walk a guy and say he's 30 tabling and he's tiling, it's still really hard to notice. Yeah, that's a good thread. If I remember it correctly, I think. Sure, it's good though. Dottie says, then I give a walk again to show him I'm still capable of folding. Yes, Big News is right. It could be good against certain people in certain spots. It would be a special occasion, though, because that would require someone having some type of a memory and then them maintaining that and then you using that. You know, but there's guys that like, I remember it was like a video of a guy who's decently good as a 9-man, and he walks the guy at 10-20 because he says, I want to show him that I can fold BVB, so later on in the game I can shove wider and he'll call tighter. But the guy probably never remembers that he got a walk at big blind 20 in a 9-man because it's like trivial. It means nothing, you know? And in these games, in like say heads up is very common where it occurs. We would have to do it in a situation where it's meaningful to do so. Marcus adds, and it's pretty tough to be sure he's seeing. Yeah, agree. I mean, think about it. Like a lot of guys, they could be checking their emails, playing way too many tables. They're on the phone. There's distractions going on, you know? Big Nuke says, yeah, it's going to be at final tables when you're owned. Yeah, maybe versus a good player like Simplicity might remember you give him a walk. But against a lot of other people, it means nothing. And we're kind of overthinking. It can be psychological fancy play syndrome. So here's kind of an example of that. Okay. So this is a final table of 180 man. This chat group is a distraction sometimes. Nothing wrong with just muting it or something. I don't know. So anyway, final table, it folds around. We have 0 reads right now. We know that looking at stacks, one guy is short. We are bigger than them. What do you guys do here? You bet. No, good question. It must be an $8 180 man because it's final table and the stacks aren't massive for a $3 rebuy. So basically 8-handed, final table, and 0 reads. Of course, in game, you'll have a few things leading up to this hand that may influence you, but let's just say 0 reads. So Marcus 4X's. Big Nuke says limp is okay. Puyon says raisey daisy. To what raise size? Puyon says folding isn't terrible. Big Nuke says 2.1. Puyon 2x. Marcus, why 4x readless? I raised to pi. 3.14x. Just kidding. Why would you do 4x readless? So you're making it 12K to go. But you're going to lose more chips if the small blind has a hand. Agree. 4x doesn't seem to make any sense. Because if you're just trying to commit yourself as a big blind, you could raise and call, and it's the same thing no matter what. If you raise 12 and the small blind shoves, you're just going to lose more chips. Anyway, whatever decision you make, in-game, hero folds. Let's actually, how does a min raise look too weak? How does min raise look weak here? I want to know. You are shoving pretty wide. Doesn't matter what you do. Matters what Snell Gel and Power Forever do. A very common thing about overthinking is thinking, what would I do? And without realizing it, assigning those moves to other people. Because you know yourself best. And it's very easy to put your own plays in other people's playbook, essentially. Because your brain is trying to explain what is going to happen here. And the thing that's most clear is the thing that makes sense to you. I agree. If you are going to reshove over min raises, then yeah, min raise is a crappy play. But it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what these two particular guys do. Mavs is in the chat box. That a boy. So Mav says, so you min raise fold. Yeah, it would be a great spot. Readless. You have a guy who has just under 3 big blinds up there, and you're the chip leader, a decent-sized chip leader of the remaining people. And we know that we can raise fold to 8 big blind stacks, so 7 big blinds is very close. And we could fold and just keep our stack where it is. But you have lots of leverage because of the other guy being so short. So Dottie says, maybe 8's ace-king, 4 times raise. Why? If we're afraid he's shoving wide, why 4x and get it in against better hands and fold out worse hands? Whoa, that is smart. He's saying a 4x looks like ace-king. Agree, to us. Now let's think about them. We don't really know anything. I agree that 12x gets more folds. I do agree because they have to call more. So that makes sense. So you're earning more folds by making it 12, but then you're losing more when you have to fold. Because, Marcus, one thing that's really interesting here, answer this question, Marcus. What is the maximum folding equity you have in this hand? Your folding equity. The exact term, folding equity. I think I said this to like everybody this week. It's like the trend of the week. In a way, yeah, equity is percentage. Equity is like the amount earned. I guess you could say it in both ways. Like, I have 100% equity here. Or you could say how much that 100% is actually worth. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You could say it in both ways. So basically okay. Basically, what we're saying here is like you could say if you're folding equity, the best possible scenario is they fold 100% of the time, obviously. Um, so you could say I have 100% folding equity, but we want to think about the actual value that it's worth. You know, like if you say I own 5% equity of a company, I would want to know what that 5% is actually worth in dollars before I get all excited about owning 5% of a company. 5% of a company could mean like $500 million. It could also mean 2 cents, you know? So here you're folding equity. If it was 100%, would be 6,900 chips because that's the size of the pot. The maximum equity you gain from folds here would be 6,900 chips. So when you raise to 12, you're trying to maximize folding equity, but you're capped at 6,900 no matter what you do here. That's like the record. If you set the all-time record for most folding equity in this hand, it would be 6,900 chips. So, but then when you raise to 12, you're risking 6K more. So the times when you fold out 6K, whoop, there it goes, all gone. Plus, min raising, you have tons of folding equity, unless you're against a player like yourself who's abusing. Because that guy's short right there. That all makes sense? I gotta fast forward to some of these hands, so we're not here for 5 hours today. Right, because you're assigning your own actions to them. If I was playing against you, now that I know you reshove wide, I don't want to do that, right? So I'd probably fold here to avoid that from happening. So anyway, but here's where a psychological fancy play syndrome can happen. Okay, one sec. Paul says, at what point should we be min raising and 2.1x start? I don't know, when Annie's kicking or something. It really doesn't make too much of a difference. Usually like 2 to 2.5 is just a great raise. And the higher the blinds, the lower your raise should get. So here comes this next hand right here. And Hero thinks, aha, they saw me fold the last hand, so I could raise wider this hand. How is that flawed thinking? Well, it's not 100% flawed. There's definitely times when it's a very valid form of thinking. But the majority of the time, how is that flawed? Risk small to get a cheap pot. It's good news. Morton, dead on. Because maybe they didn't notice. Yeah, Marcus is right too. If the big blind's thinking anything at all, which who knows even if he is, he's thinking that guy shoved on me the last hand. He's not thinking the button folded, therefore he's tight. Dottie makes a joke, LOL. Bet it fast. We want to be doing it in 20 seconds while it's still in the short-term memory. If flatted, 7-4 suited is better. I guess after the game I found out that the small blind is actually up almost $80,000, which is cool. I didn't know in game. So he's probably not going to flat here, but whatever. We'll read this at the time. Same kind of thing here. He folds anyway, but he wanted to raise like, oh, the last hand they saw me do this, so I'm going to do this. Maybe they just don't notice. Because it's easier to notice active things than passive things. You were passive on the last hand. But even noticing active things is hard. I bet you, even if the big blind remembers this now, give it 20 seconds, give it a minute, and he's going to completely forget that that happened. People remember things sometimes when it's repetition over and over and over. That's why sometimes I don't like the table ninja raises, because they're unique numbers. And when someone can see that pattern happening over and over and over again. But if you min raise, you just blend in with the crowd, basically. This is what's normal. But if there's something different over and over and over and over, why is this guy raising to 6,129 over and over and over? Sometimes now it's easier to notice. Like earlier, we were talking about how repetition increases memory. Yeah. This is good. Activeness gets noticed, passiveness doesn't. And really, it's not just in poker, it's just life. It's easier to remember things that happen than things that don't happen. Okay. So it's those hands. So looking at the last hands, okay, we got 6 hands. We'll fly through these. These are examples about now how to use reads and combine that with short-term memory and to use it to our advantage, okay? So we were talking about look for reads that can be useful. You know, we were talking about frequency and people who call YBBB or easy things that are noticeable and useful. Okay, so I'm going to flip through some of these hands. I'll go one by one, and I want you to tell me what a simple thing that we can learn from these hands, okay? So this is stage of the game really quick. Our hero, Bubble Outcast. Well, he's not, I guess he's not hero. He's villain. Oh, no. Bubble Outcast is here. So is Bruno Nero. It's, I don't even know who the button is. It's three-handed in a $3 rebuy. The stack depths are pretty nice. 35x the button. Bubble Outcast has 8, which I guess that's not so nice. And 45 big blinds for hero. Okay, so let's look at this hand. Okay, totally fine. You can do lots of things here. You could flat. Folding seems a little weak. 3-bet is fine. It might be a little big. Who cares? I'm not worried about that. I want to see the action that plays out. Okay. The very next hand in game. What do you do? Raise it up. Cool. Because the last hand is, in a way, it's a trick. Maybe the last hand he just had a good hand. I think we should raise here. He decides to limp, which is fine. Villain raises. Hero re-raises. Why is this a small mistake here? The sizing seems a little big, yeah, agree. And then the last hand is big, slightly over 3x. We want to go more, if we're going to do it like 60k, sounds nice. Marcus is on to something. He says, because he knows and remembers maybe that we can 3-bet fold. It's a good point. I don't mind doing this play, but I think that this is an example of poor timing, because if you think about it, here's the actual real life time that goes by. Ready? He folds. The next hand is dealt. And this is literally occurring 4 to 8 seconds later. He's doing it again 4 to 8 seconds from when the first play happened. People may not be the best memory people on earth, but if it happens right away, you can pretty much remember it. Like if I say a word right now, right? If I say a word like computer, you're probably going to remember it for a little bit. And then like 20 minutes from now, that's probably just going to fade away. Without looking up, I don't know if anybody saw this. When the session started, I wrote a word in the chat box. I don't know if anybody saw that. Does anybody remember what that word is at all? Like, I don't even know if you saw it. It was during the countdown. No, no one scroll. That's cheating, fool. Did anyone see a word or whatever? I mean, I don't know if that's a good example at all. But I just did it as I thought it would be a test. Like, just see if anybody... Does anybody remember even seeing a word at all? I don't know. Maybe it makes no difference. Don't worry about it. It was a failed test. Fail block. No one cares. Exactly. It started with a C. Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's things that really don't matter. Like, people don't remember, right? Like, I'm sure your eyes, like, all saw it. No, it wasn't that word, Leon. Because we were all, like, I think most of us were looking at the countdown. I don't know. But it wasn't important. Anyway. He shoves. So the mistake was the timing. All right, let's move on. Go look up the word yourself. Okay, so now we're heads up. He raises with king 10. I'm just going to flip through this hand. Tell me what you notice. I remember the word. What was the most important thing about that last hand? We were just presented with a bunch of information. What's the most important, useful piece of information? I want someone to write it out the way that we should store it in our short-term memory. Like when you tell yourself something happened. Of all the things that have been said so far, Morton has the most reasonable thing that can help us in the future. Calling the raise. Well, I should reword just in case. We're looking at what the other player did here. Something that can help us in future hands. There's lots of things that happen in that hand, but there's one thing. There's two things that stand out. One of them is the most important. Paul says he called our c-bet with no draw and completely nothing. Oh my God. Where's the short-term memory? I think he actually had something on the flop. Right? Because it fades. Can anybody tell me the board, the 5 cards that were on the board? I can't even remember it. The word was cantaloupe, Puyon. Okay, anyway. I can't even remember the flop. What was the river card? Like, I don't remember. It was a 5? So I think Marty was kind of close. Marty said that he min 3-bet. So what's the most important thing of the hand? I think there's 3 things we can take from the hand, but one thing that's absolutely useful. Should we look at it again? There was no 4 on the flop. I thought it was a 4. You convinced me. You tricked my brain into remembering 10-4-3. And look, and Paul thought he floated on the flop, and he had. There you go, Paul Chen, winner, winner. He min 3-bet. I'm not sure if it was a min bet, but he 3-bet with Queen 3 suited. In conclusion, memory sucks. Agree. +1. It's the fact that he 3-bet. Oh my God, Morton didn't even notice the 3-bet. I'm sure in-game you'd probably notice the 3-bet more. He had Queen 3. But see, this is harder to remember because we have to work backwards in our memory. We have to remember he 3-bet, take what we see now, and move back in time and insert Queen 3 into the hand. But that's huge because we just learned that he's capable of 3-betting light. And that is actually something that's very simple to remember. And we could store that in short-term memory for sure. And it's something that's very, very useful for future hands, okay? So 2 other things we can take from this hand that aren't as important. Dude called down with like 4th pair. That shows us something. That tells us we can value bet the crap out of this guy. And it also, this is the 3rd thing that's harder to notice. He didn't continuation bet when he had a hand. He checked it. He check called when he had a hand. But okay, the most important thing to take from this, he 3-bet with a not so great hand pre-flop. Any questions about that hand before moving on to the next one? Could have been. Yeah. Can that help us in another hand? I mean, I like his 3-bet. I think it's cool. We don't have to do it, whatever, but we have to have something to compare it to. Maybe he has a weird table ninja now. I mean, how much is he raising here? He's raising... I don't know. I get confused with that stuff. Oh boy. Puyan asks, can we assume that he is adjusting the 3-betting action 3-handed? I don't think we can assume it. Maybe it's just this is what he does. He's just very aggro. That's about 2.5. Okay, let's go next hand here. Okay, he flat calls. Now Marcus is right. Do you think he keeps doing this after showing? I would say more likely yes than no. Because that would mean he's going, oh my God, Bruno Nero saw what I did. Now I have to change. That's difficult. People just do what they do. They have personality traits and they just do those traits. It's really hard to like change on purpose because someone else is like, oh, I think I know what he's doing. So in this hand, like a Drenny or a Drini would have to think, Bruno Nero's on to me. He saw what I did, so I have to change. But I think there's proof that he's not thinking like that. Because if he really didn't want Bruno Nero to see what he had, why didn't he bet there? Why did he check call? If you want someone to not see your hand, you would want them to fold. So why would he check call? Which, yes. I mean, if he didn't want him to see, then he should fold the river. Oh my God, if I call, then he'll see what I did, and then he'll exploit me. You know. Or yeah, he's calling for value because he thinks he has the best hand, but he's not thinking about, like, I have to hide my hand or he'll exploit me if he knows what I'm doing. Yeah, it's very thin value. Yeah, I don't like the way this guy played it at all. I mean, his 3-bet's okay. It's just the flop call is weird because there's a bajillion scare cards. Right. Maybe it was a low flop and he didn't think hero hit the flop. But he's like not thinking about the turn or something. Like every turn is going to be awful. And so unless he's hero calling, which he did. But the fact that he hero calls represents that he doesn't mind if Bruno Nero sees his hand. Paul Chen is right. I think we can exploit this guy by value betting more because he's capable of calling. Yeah, Marcus, hey, maybe he's just thinking, I have a pair. Like, a pair is good heads up. Anyway, next hand. We raise, he calls, we flop 2 pair. We bet. We are raised. Marty says push. Morton says call. Marcus says call. Well, we can't call check because we're in position, so he'd have to act first. Puyan says flat or shove are both fine. Oh, so you're saying flat and then maybe he'll push. Big Nuke says make it 122. Dottie makes a bad joke. Just kidding. I like that. Paul says I shove. He definitely overvalues hands. That's smart. How can we read that queen 3 to our advantage? Not the queen 3 itself. What does the queen 3 tell us about him? Because, come on, how many people 3-bet queen 3 preflop like that? Like, that's a pretty rare. Ah, very good, but he didn't 3-bet it post. That's true. How could you characterize the queen 3 in the most simplest way possible that helps us for future hands? Because remember, we want to make it simple so we could store it in our short-term memory. There's 2 ways to describe it that are really, really good. He 3-bet light preflop heads up, right? But what does that mean, though? It's not necessarily Queen 3 itself. It's what that represents about him. What does that tell us about his personality? Example, if someone steals money from you, what does that represent about their personality? He's an asshole, right? Marcus is right. Aggressiveness. Puyan says his 3-betting range includes a lot of bluffs. It's really close. We don't know if he has a polarized 3-bet range. We don't know that for sure. I think Marcus is the closest so far, but saying aggressiveness. What does it mean? When we see someone 3-bet Queen 3 preflop, what type of personality trait can we assign to this player? We know that he is aggressive pre and called down post, Morton says. It was like he was aggressive when he didn't have a hand, but then he called when he did have a hand, which is weird. He's a gambler. He's a risk taker. He's aggressive. Molly could be a hero play. Could be. In his mind, it's justified somehow. I want to know what we can characterize this guy as. The best words I've seen so far are aggressive. Someone said gambler, risk taker. If you had to fill in the sentence, that or that, how would you fill in those sentences? This is the simplest way. Yes, he's capable of bluffing, and he's capable of making what? Making plays, exactly, or making moves. When someone 3-bets with Queen 3, that is very telling. What just happened there? You guys can still see, yes? Okay. He is capable of making moves. So now that you know he's capable of making moves, what is the best play here? Yeah. Let him make more moves. Yes! Calling is good and min 4-betting is good. Or 3-bet, whatever number bet that is. Marty, good job, man. Because about 5 minutes ago, you said to shove. Because shove is a standard play right here. You have 2 pair, it's a drawing board or whatever. But now let's incorporate the read that we've stored into our short-term memory. He's capable of making moves, so we have to do something to let him make a move. Give him room to fuck up. Perfect. And Paul Chan is right. Shoving doesn't give him a chance to donk off more chips. Exactly. When you shove, you take away the opportunity for your opponent to bluff. Very, very good. Okay? So in this hand, hero calls. Cool. I think calling and re-min raising are both good because you're allowing a player who's capable of making moves, you give him a chance to do that. Whoa. All right. Way to go, someone. Okay. Almost done here. So here's the turn, and he checks. Weird. Why isn't he making a move? I thought he was capable of making moves. Yeah, I mean, you could bet 40. You could do a lot of things. I'm not sure what the best play is here. Hero checks right here. I think you could bet or check. If you bet, you want to give him the chance to bluff just in case. I'm not sure. Probably bet just because the pot's huge, I guess. I know you can't fold if the flush comes because you know that he's capable of making moves. Not everyone just 3-bets Queen 3 preflop randomly. Like, there's a reason because he gets involved. He does stuff. And also, if it helps, one thing we can't see in this is he's been raising very frequently preflop. So there's a lot of aggression going on here. Okay. I think maybe a bet's better to charge some cards. So the river's a 4. He checks again. At this point in the hand, would you think that he has some type of a hand or that he doesn't have some type of a hand? Sorry, guys. How does he have bottom pair? I thought he check called with bottom pair. Anyway, whatever, maybe. Could be. So what do you guys bet here? If you bet, I mean, he don't you think if he had a bluff that he would, if he's capable of bluffing, he would make a move? Yeah, I think those are all good bets. Everybody type in a hand you think this guy has. Hint, he has something. Try and guess the exact hand, just for fun. Cool. Seems like his range isn't, well, it could be a flush draw, like he check raises with a flush draw, but then he didn't continue his aggression. It's possible. You're saying 10-7 of diamonds? Here we go. Ooh, pretty close, sir. Okay. We raise. He reshoves 20x. Instant decision here. What do you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see it being an easy fold. Marty says call. You mean you call ace-9 is what you mean? Okay, yeah, I can see that. Both options do seem fine. I mean, what's EV-wise, it's probably a call, but we think common sense-wise, it seems like an easy fold because just keep your stack. One thing that we're not seeing here is how aggressive this guy's been overall. We've just seen a few hands where he's done something, and this guy's been like raise, 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 raise. So like in game, Bruno narrow calls because he felt like the guy was going crazy. But notice how the Queen 3 hand can help this hand, even though calling's a little borderline. It feels kind of gross. Like I would much want like ace 8, ace 9. And Puyon's right. There are better situations later. I fold probably like 95% of the time here. And Bruno Nero thought that calling would be okay because of the things that he was seeing. But you see how at least like the Queen 3 kind of helps this hand a little bit. I wish I still had like ace 8, ace 9 though. So anybody call at all? Okay, fine. So he makes a hero call, and the guy is 8-6. And the number one reason he did call is just because of the Queen 3. But I think this hand's cool, whether you call or not. What I think's cool about it is because it's an example of how we can actually use something that happened to help make a decision. Straight. Last hand. Last hand. Now what? What do you mean by click back, Dottie? Marty, could you tell me why shove here is not a good play? Very good, but most importantly, he doesn't have the chance to do what now? Exactly. Ooh. We want to give him a chance to make a move. I kind of like I like the min raise back. I even like Morton said 150. It seems too big. We want to give the illusion that we can still fold, or like we're trying to play back at him or something, because he's capable of bluffing like here in these spots because we've seen him do it. So we want to do some type of a bluff. The thing is, sometimes a really cool thing is use other people's thoughts against them. Remember how Marcus was saying that if you min raise, it's very weak because someone could reshove on you? Because he was assigning his own thinking to his opponent. So sometimes if you could figure out the way someone thinks in a situation, use that same thinking process against them, because they're going to be thinking that because it's what they do. It's not like we're doing this, he's thinking, I'm thinking, he's thinking, and we go back and forth, and it's really complicated. We know that this guy's capable of making moves. So it's going to be easier for him to assign making a move to us because that's what he does. It might sound a little complicated and like a far stretch, but it's easier to assign your own actions to other people than it is to realize what the other person is doing. So in a way, we kind of use this against them. That's why I kind of found it cool when Puyon said 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, because it kind of seems like you're calling him out. Like, I think if I were going to raise here, I'd make it 116 666, or right, or like 11111. I think that's even better because that's essentially a min raise, but it triggers something. It triggers like, oh, he's just like, he's mocking me or something like that. So these things, they rarely come up, but we just want to start thinking about how someone is thinking, but more importantly, watching what other people do, taking a play like the Queen 3 of Hearts hand and using it to our to our advantage. I think 11111 would be the best possible raise here with another one. Ooh, 11666. Because it's kind of like you're calling him out. But no matter what the sizing is, we want to allow him to make a move here, right? Because we know he's capable of making a move here. Worst possible play. Well, okay, the worst play is the fold. And it's not bad to shove. I mean, this is super plus EV, right? But there's a way better play. Anybody want to guess what he has? Hint, he will call. Anybody else? Big Nukes, you read souls. So hero wins, which is cool. Can't remember if he won the game, won the hand. But no matter what the raise size is here, we want to give him a chance to make a move. Okay. So if we had to sum up everything, it's don't give people credit for remembering what you do, and don't worry about your image, okay, as much. I mean, you could, if it gets out of control, you can worry about your image. But all the little things, don't overthink. Realize that short-term memory is very short, and people aren't going to remember a lot of things that you're doing or things that you're not doing, like folding, you know? But most importantly, if we're going to notice something, make sure it's something that can be useful. This is probably the best example of that. We see that he 3-bet pre-flop with Queen 3 of Hearts, and then we can use that to our advantage when we flat call here or small 3-bet to allow him the chance to make a move. And we can also see that here when we 3-bet small to allow him to make a move. So that's how to take a simple idea from one hand, but then apply it to another hand. Instead of writing big old long notes like villain 3-bet Queen 3 of Hearts, then check call the half pot bet on the flop, and then etc., etc., etc. You take the core from that hand and translate that into what it means. It means that he's capable of making moves. Nice, simple, powerful, and useful. And the best part is when you do win a game because you made a special move like that based on something you've seen, it's going to feel fucking good. Because now it's not a standard play. This is standard. Oh, shove tens. Oh, yay, I won. But what if you induced him here and he had, like, I don't know, king deuce or something? It would feel 1,000 times better because you know that your raise induce somebody to do something. On the king river. Was it king river? Oh, yeah. Good thing you didn't have king deuce here. Cool. That'll do it. TY, everyone.